What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Combine here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm joined by my co-host Eric Smith. Eric, how we doing today, my guy?
Hey, I'm doing great. It feels like forever since we've done one of these. Excited to get back into it. Excited about our guest and our topic today.
Of course, man. I know we've been putting out context, some of that micro content on offensive line, defensive line, the run fits, the pass rush, the Tua sack protection videos, and I recently did one breaking down Marcus May as well. But Eric, who we bringing in today, and who are we talking about?
Yeah, so today is Calais Campbell's the guy we're talking about today, and one of the first people in media that really started to promote Miami signing Campbell is Omar Kelly, and that's our guest today from the Miami Herald. Welcome, Omar.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Omar.
Thank you guys for having me. That I don't even know if I get credit for that because that just made too much logical sense when I looked at what they had done on the defensive line, and I wrote a piece about it the week that they signed him. I was like, your answer to losing Christian Wilkins and Raekwon Davis was to sign 5 guys for minimum base contract that collectively added up to $7.85 million when Indianapolis Colts gave Raekwon Davis $7 million. This can't be your final answer. There's no way that it can be. And when you look at Calais and his body of work, and not just what he had done as a player and the versatility that he brings, but the leadership that he brings, which I felt there was a void from a leadership standpoint on the Dolphins roster. And this isn't a knock on Jalen Ramsey or Javon Holland or Zach Sealer. But if you played the game where you've been around athletes, there's the leader by example and there's the vocal leader. And I think you always need a vocal leader. And when you lose Christian Wilkins, that left a massive void for their defense.
Of course it did. And, looking at the film and then looking at the statistics of Calais Campbell, he's a veteran guy on the defensive line. He can play the nose, he can play zero, he can play the gaps, he can play the wide 9 scheme as well. And he has experience playing under Anthony Weaver, who was the defensive line coach in Baltimore. Eric, before we dive into this film, what's your take on Calais?
Yeah, so I was familiar with Calais for he's been around for almost 2 decades now in the NFL and playing at the U before that. When I started looking at his Atlanta tape, I didn't realize how much defensive end he really did play. They didn't use him a lot in the interior stuff, but then I saw that some people were saying that in Baltimore he played more in a 0 and a 1 technique. So I went back to 2022, didn't see a lot of it there. But went back to 2021. I think it might have been before Baltimore, some of their interior guys had developed more, and Campbell was used in that role. And, this is a guy that still can play at a high level and can be a contributor at a ton of different positions along the line. And even as our edge guys start to get healthy throughout the season, there's going to be a very prominent role for Calais Campbell on this defense through the entire season.
Of course, let's get right into it. This is the very first clip, and we're going to be digging into his pass rush a little bit over here. All right, this is up against the New York Jets. Eric, could you go ahead and tell us what the front looks like and what the offensive line needs to see pre-snap? What are the protections being made here?
Yeah, so typically when you see something like this, you're going to get what we call it in my school. We call it a spider protection, where it's basically just a 5-on-5 protection. 5-0 is another way that I've heard it. But you got 5 guys on the line on defense. You got 5 offensive linemen. It's a pretty straightforward protection. When you got a guy like Calais Campbell in the middle in a defense like that, he doesn't have the same explosion that he did earlier in his career. But just having somebody that's 6'8" in the middle of your defense, that's going to create an obstacle that the offense has to work around.
What down and distance is this? Do you know?
I do not know offhand.
Neither do I.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know what down and distance it is, but it looks like it's an empty package here for the Jets. It looks like a 3 to 5 step drop from what I'm looking at. I'm going to go ahead, play the clip right.
I would think this is a third down package, especially since he's playing the nose spot. Yeah, go ahead.
And that did seem to be when Atlanta moved him to the inside more often, was in definite passing situations.
All right, post snap, Sam Darnold, he's taking a look. He's like, okay, I have 2 droppers right here. 3 people are going to be rushing here. What do I do? you can see the power of Calais right there, right as he
Oh,
stonewalls the center.
and you can see the respect that he gets there. That goes from a 5-on-5 protection down to a 5-on-3 protection. And the Jets are more comfortable leaving their tackles one-on-one on the outside than, leaving the center one-on-one with Campbell and helping the guys outside. So that's just a testament to the level of respect that his opponents still have for him, even this late in his career.
All right, here we have one up against the Dolphins. This was the Baltimore game where Tua was benched and he came back in, led the rally. And Omar, I see you smiling, man. I know you were at that game.
This is a very controversial game because Tua felt like he could play. They weren't allowing him to play. Players were saying that Brian Flores thinks that Jacoby's better than Tua. He called Tua was golfing before the game. A whole bunch of controversy on this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, right here. I believe this might have been a second down. We have Waddle motioning as well. You're taking a look at this defense. It's looking like a Brian Flores type of amoeba style defense as well. This is something that Miami's personnel did very well in. And, once they moved off of Boyer into Vic Fangio, I don't think that personnel grouping really matched up with the scheme that Fangio had, in my opinion, especially on the defensive backfield and the players that they had. Eric, we talked about the transition from Fangio to now Weaver. This personnel group, the core players mesh a bit better into this scheme. Omar, you seem to disagree.
I don't necessarily agree. I think part of the issue was last year the players wanted to use more of this amoeba. Players wanted to disguise their coverage more. Fangio was an old, stubborn, rigid man stuck in his ways, and it rubbed everybody the wrong way. However, the one thing I will say about Fangio is did they set the sack record as the franchise or not? Doing his vanilla based defense. They did. Now, the players will argue that we could have been even more productive and even more forceful if we had played this style or blended some of this style, but Fangio was just not with it. So,
Right.
Which is part of the reason why he's not here anymore. But would they have the personnel to do this now? I think they absolutely will. If you just look at the linebacker, you look at the edge rushers, look at Chop and how I think that they'll put Chop over the center. I think that they will use Chop as maybe an elephant. I think that the depth at inside linebacker is probably the greatest I've seen because of Anthony Walker's addition. Like I watched him in OTAs and I thought, man, this guy's a starter. Like he might take somebody down. So you've got 3 inside linebackers. I don't know where they are from a blitz timing standpoint, but then you've got all these edge players, especially when Phillips and Chubb come back. You could definitely put Calais and Zach in there as the defensive tackles. You could run 5 different guys and have no clue what any of them are doing.
Exactly, and that's what brings the personnel grouping together because there's a lot of versatility, there's a lot of mixing and matching, and you're going to have different game plans for different people. Kind of like in this game, this Dolphins offensive line back in 2022.
Yeah, this was 2021. This was the year before that. We got
2021.
Liam Eichenberg at left tackle. You got Austin Jackson at left guard. This entire offense was really interesting to look at the personnel from just a few years ago compared to what it is now.
Yeah, of course. We'll go ahead and run the clip. Again, Calais is at the 0. We don't know who's coming. We don't know who is going to be dropping into coverage. And pause. Eric, we're seeing a slide in protection to the left. Is there something that Brissett and the offensive line saw for them to slide to the left?
Well, being a right-handed quarterback, when you have that many guys in the line of scrimmage, there's a chance of somebody coming free, and, it may come down to the quarterback's comfort of where he wants that free rusher to come from. And Brissett may have decided that if somebody's coming free, he wants them coming off of the edge there outside of the tackle, and he may feel like he can see that better than, Tua may feel more comfortable with something coming up the middle. But you're getting a full slide to the left here to start. You can see that with the way everybody's sliding. It's just going to be everybody taking their gap to the left and then adjusting to the stunts from there.
right here. You're talking
It's
about the stunts from the inside coming through here and through here from Odafe. I think that's Odafe Owe, number 99. Or that could be someone else. I may be wrong.
From my understanding, maybe Eric, you could address this. I think the center's responsibility is to identify the inside linebacker and then work the protection from there. On this play, I'm assuming 54 would be the inside linebacker, which means they'd have to slide everything left.
Yeah, so I mean it's going to vary based on team. It's going to vary based on game. Sometimes it's the Mike linebacker they're identifying. Sometimes it's the Sam, the strong side linebacker. Sometimes the Will. That's all game plan dependent. But yeah, usually the offensive line is identifying somebody that's kind of the point player that's going to define where that's or the direction that the protection is going. But it can vary between teams, whether it's the center's accountability or the quarterbacks to actually call what protection the offensive line is going to be using. I think that, especially now, I think that that responsibility probably falls on Tua at this point in this offense. That he probably has that level of control with the comfort of the offense to decide where that protection is going, so that he knows exactly what's going on in front of him, and he can use his pre-snap reads to check the post-snap picture and hit those quick throws that he's been doing.
Yeah, and the thing is, Eric, you and I have taken a little bit of a look at the 2023 offensive playbook as well that was out there and then got deleted. We saw some of those offensive line pre-snaps and those checks and that they were looking at. Look, in game, nobody besides the coaches and the players know what the hell the calls are. And when we start to take a look at the game and critique, we're like, oh, Liam blew a protection right there. Oh, Teron Armstead was late to the snap. Maybe it was built that way. We don't know until we actually see the playbook and see the protection and see the calls. And all we can do is dissect and analyze it. I'll go ahead, run the clip, post-snap picture right there. You can see Calais Campbell absolutely bully. Who's the center back there? It's been a while.
I think it was Austin Reiter that was the center back then. I think it's
Michael
number
Dieter.
61.
That was Dieter. Anyway, I don't even remember that team, but yes.
Yeah.
No, Michael Dieter was like a backup at that.
No, I think it was Austin Reiter, 61.
61, yeah.
Yeah, 61, Austin Reiter.
Yeah, I mean, on this one, Robert Hunt kind of oversells here to block Calais Campbell, but again, the respect that Calais Campbell is getting with that is what opens up that loop back inside. And that's what, essentially creates that sack there.
All right, this play right here is more so of a stack and shed. Calais Campbell is playing over the gap. He's playing as the one tech. He's shading over the left shoulder of the center. Front coverage, Eric, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's a four-man front, and I don't remember exactly what this run play is. It's going to be a run play to the left side of the offense. This is just a really good job by Calais Campbell as you run through the film here of him using his length and his strength to, jam that offensive lineman, create that separation, and he's going to do whatever he wants from there. You can see that right off that snap, he's got the A gap locked up, but because of that separation with his long arms, when the back tries to pop out to the B gap, he just tosses that left guard, which was Austin Jackson at that time. Just tosses him out of the way and still makes the play.
And the thing is, he can hold his ground against any offensive lineman in the league. It doesn't matter where he's lined up. And that's the thing, dude, especially playing in those late November, December football games when teams are trying to run the ball. We've got San Francisco late in the year. I believe we may have Buffalo late in the year as well. I got to take a look at the schedule again, but man,
that's if his 37-year-old, 38-year-old body at that time can hold up. I mean, That's the one concern that I have about Calais is, I would think he's at about a 500 snap pitch count, and you cannot abuse that early in the season because you're gonna pay a cost for it late in the year. The one thing that I will say that I agree with NFL teams in regards to players are, when their bodies turn 30, the recovery time is so much longer than it would be for a younger 25-year-old player. So imagine where your body is at 38. And obviously Calais is a pro. He knows how to take care of his body. He's always been a freak of nature. So These are people. There are people who are humanly not supposed to do anything outside of play football or be a professional athlete. And I remember Calais as a 11th grader coming to the University of Miami on an official visit, I believe before we went to the Fiesta Bowl. That's where I first met him. And I remember looking at him and thinking to myself, this is a basketball player. And then hearing him talk about how I'm going to go play basketball and football. And I thought to myself, you think you're going to do that, but that's not really what you're going to do. You're going to learn how to be a good defensive end in the NFL and eventually be a first-round pick. Now, he wasn't a first-round pick, but he did turn into an all-decade talent in the NFL and potential Hall of Famer.
He did. All right, this clip here, it looks like a 6-man front. We do have a defensive back lined up here on the line of scrimmage. Tua is in the game. They are in a pistol formation right here. You have your 5 offensive linemen and 2 tight ends.
8 in the box.
8 in the box right here. Let's see what happens. We'll go ahead and roll
the in the nose.
No,
I think he's on the left side there in the 3 tech.
Okay, yes,
he's right here as the 3 tech.
Okay. Maybe
that's a little wider than that.
There's the motion. Look how he gets off the snap, man. He's fast off the snap. Look at that. He literally blew up that run.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a zone left run and penetration. Any run scheme, penetration is going to be a killer. But when you're trying to run a zone run play, you're getting pressure through the B gap. That's almost always going to be dead in the water from the start. So when you have somebody who can get upfield the way that Calais could, especially back then in 2021, that's going to be really tough to run against. And that's something that's really impressive with him. When I watched, starting with even last year with the Atlanta film, like I know when I did a video on him, I said on my video, like, the stuff that I'm showing may look like a highlight reel, but that's just Calais. Like he literally shuts down one side of the offensive line, and it is really impressive and fun to watch. And I'm hoping that he can still play at that level because you just cannot run to his side unless you're running outside the tight end, because he's just that fundamentally sound that he just shut down everything to his side.
Yeah,
he said he takes pride in being a 5 technique, and absolutely, if he's on that side, it's locked down. That edge is going to be set, and that was one of my main concerns when I looked at this Dolphins defense. Outside of the inexperience at nose or the conditioning at nose, and I think that still needs to kind of be addressed or see how that plays out with Tard or Benito Jones or Peely. We know what Zach is. We know what Zach can do. We know Zach has a little bit of versatility to him. I think Zach can also play the 5 technique. But if you take the Bill Belichick approach of taking away what a team likes to do and put Calais in that particular gap, which is your primary running gap, or the offensive lineman you want to run behind, it's lights out. And I really don't think that they're maybe Penei Sewell. I'd love to see Calais against Detroit. Look at that film to see, how well he's really playing out there on the edge.
Right. There was actually some, I know somebody, I forget who it was, on Twitter had posted some film from that game, and Calais was more successful against Sewell than a lot of defensive ends are.
And the reason is because of his experience. Like Sewell hits his 3rd year in the league. He's been here for what, 9 years, I want to say.
Who, Calais?
This is going to be his 8th year in the NFL.
Who, Calais?
Calais, I believe.
No, way more than that. He's way more than 17.
Yeah, I think he's on 17.
Yeah, he's either entering 17 or going to be 18.
Yeah, Calais is on 17.
2008 was his first year.
Oh yeah. Wait, I'm young. I'm 24.
Calais, and this is the one thing I wrote about in one of my Miami Herald columns. Calais is the last of the great Hurricanes. He is the last player from that great era. Yes, he didn't win a championship with the Hurricanes, but he was playing. He played on that Orange Bowl team that won the Orange Bowl, and that was the last time that the Hurricanes were actually the Hurricanes. And man, it's like the last of the Mohicans in terms of the legendary player. And I think there are 5 players from that era who are in the Hall of Fame or either going to be Hall of Fame contenders, and Calais happens to be one of them.
Yep. Looking back on his 2016 season, he was number 5 in run stops, number 6 in tackles for loss. In 2018, he was number 1 in run stuffs, number 1 in tackles for loss, and number 1 in solo tackles for a defensive tackle, defensive lineman. In 2021, he was number 5 again in run stuffs. 2023, which was last season, number 5 again in run stuffs, number 15 in solo tackles as a defensive lineman. So he is productive. You can get a lot out of him. And Omar, you said it, for a guy 37, 38 at that body who's going to be aging and takes much more longer to recover, that's the reason why the Dolphins have 4 or 5 defensive linemen that they can rotate in and out of games. And you can use him in second and long or third and short situations as well, where okay, they're going to be running the ball here. They're going to be passing the ball out of this set right here. Calais, you're going in right here. We'll go ahead. He's back here as the 3 tech on the right-hand side of the offensive line. Eric, this looks like a bunch formation. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men in the box. As an offensive lineman, when you're playing like this, what are, the conditions, the structures that they have to follow pre-snap up against this front?
Yes, I mean, it's a pretty heavy front, both offensively and defensively. You got at least 2 tight ends in there and, kind of a wing wide receiver on the outside there. When you're looking at something like this, I would expect some sort of slant from the defense, them being lined up in the gaps. Usually they're not just going to give that to you because that's almost too easy to block. But from an offensive perspective, when I'm seeing one linebacker there, if I'm running the ball, like I'm just trying to get through that first level, and you're almost certain to have a one-on-one scenario with the safety. So the defensive line really has to play good gap sound football to make sure that opportunity doesn't present itself.
We'll go ahead and run the play. There's the motion.
Oh. Okay. So the reason that we had this one in here was I talked about earlier when we looked at him over the nose rushing the pass and just the way that a 6'8" guy, affects a pass. And that's the same thing that you see on here. This pass goes wide. And if you look at where Calais is when this ball is thrown, you can see that just his size, didn't allow a direct path to throw that ball, right? That ball is being thrown outside of Calais and it's outside of the receiver. So just, his wingspan is enough to affect the quarterback, even if he's not, burning around the edge the way that we love to think of edge rushers, but he brings a different aspect to that pass rush.
And think about it. He's got a lot of experience in this NFL. He's used to playing up against these Shanahan style of teams, the 49ers, the Packers. You have the Texans now as well, and the Jets as well. He knows how this offensive line is going to play in several different types of formations. He knows the plays that may be coming as well from the tight ends and running backs as well. We'll go ahead and run this clip as well. Where is he? He's right here in the 3 tech as well. Stop the play. Sheds the blocker immediately, and that's number 50, Zach Tom. Sheds him, makes the stop for the run.
Yeah, again, that's just that length. I mean, he plays with his hands so well. Like you see guys that are big like him. You see those 6'7", 6'8" guys that, are just in there because they're big. But what separates Calais is just how fundamentally sound he is. When you're 6'8" and you're playing as a 4 technique here, it's difficult to play with good enough leverage that you don't get blown out in the run game. And that almost never happens with Calais. But that's what you're seeing here is that when he comes off the ball, the fundamentals are there, that his hands are locking up that offensive lineman, and he's just shedding him right away. This offensive lineman doesn't even have a chance. And it comes down to just how strong and fundamentally sound that Calais is.
Strong, long arms, great hand use. To me, I think the only weakness would be if you cut him. And how good he is on his feet.
Yeah, and there's actually a video. I don't know if we're going to get to that one tonight, but even when they're cutting him, like he does a good job of squeezing that gap, and does a good job of protecting himself while not just abandoning his responsibility. Like, he's just impressive in almost every way.
Now, Omar, is Calais Campbell one of one, or does he remind you of someone else?
I think one of one. I can't name you a body type of 6'8", three technique defensive end. I can't name you anybody with his build, his athleticism. It's funny you say that because he is a basketball player playing football. Now, obviously, the toughness and the physicality, basketball players generally don't have that. But when you're talking about long arms to stiff arm guys, to shed them, to get them onto the ground, or to have it in the passing lanes, that's really what his forte is, and probably has always been. And as he's matured, he's gained grown man strength, which he was always strong. But I think everybody who's a grown man knows there's a difference between grown man strength and then strength. And he's got so much functional strength on top of, he ballooned up to, used to be 260, and like he ballooned up to like 290 now. I think he's hovering around 290, and still playing with great feet, great hand usage. It's quite it. When I say I don't think that this is his last year, I think Calais is one of those rare individuals because of what he does and how he plays. He can play till his 40s if he's interested in doing it, and if it's a team that's willing to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, he came here and he said it in his media presser. He came here because he thinks the Dolphins could win a Super Bowl, albeit he's here on a 1-year contract. So, I mean, that's high praise for, I mean, we know that's media talk, building up the team as well. That's high praise,
Yeah.
but 1-year contract, maybe could the Dolphins extend him next year as
I,
well?
I don't think that this is a one and done situation, especially as long as Anthony Weaver's here. If you just, and I don't know what the exact contract is for, it still hasn't been reported to the league as of yet. When it does, I'll report on it. But if you look at where Calais is and where the league is, and I don't know where he calls home, it could be North Florida, somewhere in North Florida. It could be Arizona, where he began his career. Generally, and I say this all the time, most players call Miami home or call South Florida home because of the tax benefits, or call Florida home because of the tax benefits. So I don't know where his home is, but he's also got young kids. And if he's going to be bringing his whole family and his kids, and they get settled into school and he's settled into a home, I wouldn't be surprised if we could see him play, not just one, but two, maybe even 3 seasons, especially if Anthony Weaver's here and if he continues to play at a high level.
All right. All right, Eric, right here we have a backside zone concept right here. Can you talk to us about the concept and the schematics before we run this play?
So yeah, he says a zone play. We're going left or right.
Or the running
I
back
don't
is
remember
going
this.
to the right side.
Okay, so running back's going to the right. So everybody's going to be, first step. Everybody should be stepping. Nope, we're going to the left there.
We're going to the left.
Okay, so same idea. Everybody's stepping to the left, probably using covered, uncovered principles there. Going to be looking at that tackle is probably going to be looking to seal Calais outside if he can. And then the back's going to be reading that front side tackle to determine whether he's going to keep it front side or go backside. And you can see that he goes backside on this. And this was in here because this is one of the few times that Calais lost a rep. And if you watch right there at the end, see the way he pounds the ground, like he is pissed that he lost that rep. He talks about taking it personal. It's very evident on the film. Like Omar said, he takes it personal. There's a video that I posted on Saturday of him mic'd up, and I think it had a clip in there of him, giving somebody crap about running to his side because he takes that personal. And you can see that in this clip that, it's rare that he loses, but he's not a guy that's just going to get, washed out and say, oh, well, I'm just going to go play the next play and hope that it goes better. Like, he is pissed when he loses, and I wouldn't want to be on the other side of him on the next play when that happens.
All right, here he is again on the 3 tech. This is a pass rush right here. We're seeing a lot of motions as well. And typically when you take a look at motions as a defensive lineman, you're trying to blow up the gap as soon as possible so you can, number one, disrupt the timing of what the motion is going to accomplish. Number two, put pressure on the quarterback, because when you are blitzing and absolutely destroying the gap where the quarterback is going to be set his feet, you've already won the rep. And 9 out of 10 times, you've won the play as well. You impact the offense, and they have to play for another down, especially on second and third downs as well, which I do think Calais is going to be the X factor on the defensive line um, early on in the season. I'll go ahead and run the clip one more time.
If you watch this clip, I could see Tart or Jones there at the nose tackle, and where 90 is Sealer playing against the left tackle. And Calais, I think, is always, and Eric, maybe you want to address this, but, every team has a side that they like to run towards. And I think I've seen Calais mostly go against the right tackle throughout his career.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, most teams are a little more heavy on their run to the right, and a lot of that has to do with the, booting out of that and stuff like that. But yeah, historically, a lot of teams like to get downhill on the right side. You talk about, some stuff that may or may not matter in terms of, a right-handed running back may feel more comfortable getting to the outside on the right hand, keeping that ball in the right hand as opposed to having it on the inside. There's a lot of different little stuff like that. But you do see a lot of teams that prefer to run to the right side.
And you know who likes to prefer to run to the left side of the ball?
Miami Dolphins.
Exactly. Do you know why they like to run to the left side of the ball?
Because they have a left-handed quarterback.
No, not because they have a left-handed quarterback.
Why?
Because of Teron Armstead, and because of Teron Armstead primarily. If you take a look at the Dolphins' rush success rate with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, most of their success comes from the left side of the ball, from the outside perimeter, and on the right-hand side of Teron Armstead.
I don't disagree with you. However, I also think the factor of maybe play action fakes to the left factors into a defensive decision making, because you can't be too aggressive when Tua's not, because Tua's not going to roll to his right. It's just,
we know this,
So, but yeah, obviously, and that's why I love when people always say, "Oh, left-handed quarterback needs a strong right tackle." And I disagree with you. I think a left-handed quarterback needs a strong left tackle just because his boot leg is to the left. So, you need somebody to pin that in, and then if you're running, I think you could run right to the right on play action anyway.
Eric, do you agree with what Omar just said?
I think there's good points to be made to both sides of it. I mean, when you look at, the way that Miami uses their play action, when you're looking at it, Miami doesn't roll him out as much, but there is still a lot of play action. And when you're faking that play action to your left, right, and then so your run action is going to go to your left, but they're not necessarily booting out to the right-hand side. So I can see where the left side, may have more success, because when you're running that play action to the left, they've got to respect that run game, but they also have to respect the pass game. So they can't come flying up on Achane or Mostert going around the edge. So I can see where that, could be more effective there. There's definitely arguments to be made for both sides of that.
Yeah, I also think that this team, the coaching staff, and this has been just preached to me nonstop, they play to the strengths of their team. So if you've got Lester Cotton out there at left guard, are you really going to be running pulling plays? You might as well throw that out the window. And when Teron is lacking his mobility, I believe there was one game last year, I think it was the Jets game, where it just wasn't there. And you can notice that. I think that they throw some of those things out of the playbook. What are we looking at here? Yeah.
Ooh, he's right here.
The hand use is the one thing when I look at it. When you look at Calais Campbell, I just became so obsessed with the hand use. I mean,
Oh, let me go back to that play. There we go.
He's just so violent when it comes to his hand usage.
In this play, the running back is taught to look for the head of the defensive lineman. So if you watch this play, as the running back's getting the ball, Calais' head is to the inside
Here.
of that offensive tackle. So that's why the running back is cutting to the outside. But Calais is, a veteran. He knows exactly what's about to happen. So he's basically just setting it up, peeking that head inside. And then as soon as he cuts outside, he's just going to toss the offensive lineman and make the play.
Look,
Like
so
this
in
tape is
training
fun to
camp,
watch.
and I'm gonna get a little bit dirty right here. In training camp, when they're doing the block shedders, they're holding the block and they're moving their head to grab over to the ball carrier. You see it a lot in training camp. You see it in OTAs. Omar, you've been to how many Dolphins training camps?
16. Yeah, 16.
Like, this is literally basic stuff that he's a master at.
But they do. Austin Clark does such a good job fundamentally in terms of teaching guys technical things. And I know exactly the drill that you're talking about in terms of, where they have to peek out. And 97, boy, he is a vicious man.
Grady Jarrett?
That's what, yeah. Is that Grady Jarrett?
97 is Grady Jarrett.
Yeah. Didn't he get shaken down this year too?
I think he might have.
Yeah.
He got a contract last year, I believe. Well, he's 31 now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
good.
Jesus.
It's kind of same idea here. So the back is this is a zone to the left. The back is reading that front side tackle, and the front side of the defense is, getting to the outside of the offensive line. So that's saying cut back right away for the running back. And all that tight end that's trying to block Calais Campbell has to do is just get in front of him and slow him down to open up that lane. And it's just, it's worthless to even try it with a tight end.
Yeah,
you can see that it doesn't even slow him down. Like it's, kind of like a 3-year-old, trying to contain him. So that's just, again, good fundamental defense. He's not taking himself out of position, but he's also, not going to let tight end wash him down completely to cut back. And then just more of the same there. Again, that one, he's peeking to the outside, letting that running back think that he's got that cutback lane.
Inside.
And as soon as he puts his foot in the dirt, Calais is just going to meet him right there.
All right, before we go, I did want to get to this comment. Funny comment, but honestly, where is it? Will Calais Campbell teach Patrick Paul this year?
They won't. I don't think they'll be working up against one another because I think Calais is going to be working up against the right tackle. But yeah, obviously somebody's going to teach Patrick Paul outside of Teron Armstead. I think based on what I've seen, and I know I haven't seen anything in pads yet. I think the Chop Robinsons, I think the speed guys are what's going to be his issue. The feet are just a little bit slow for me. And the punch is just a little bit slow for me. He's a massive man, freak of nature. And maybe when these rushers slow down because they've got pads on, it'll look a little bit easier for him or be a little bit easier for him. And honestly, in these pajamas and football and pajamas, it's difficult to evaluate offensive linemen. It's nearly impossible. You'll get a better understanding of who Patrick Paul is when the pads come on. But he's probably the biggest offensive lineman I've ever seen in my career, with the exception of Brian McKinney. Brian McKinney's probably the only person that's even close to as big as him. He got massive 6'8", long arms. I would love to see his feet move a little bit better, but when you're that big, do you really need that great feet? You really have to just worry about the speed guys.
Of course. Omar,
I agree with that. When you look at Omar, I know Omar's got to head out, so I do appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to us as well.
Yeah, definitely continue to do your work, guys, because I definitely enjoy the technical aspect, and I strongly encourage anybody who's got NFL Pass, go watch some of those. If you doubt, because I said something that became controversial. I don't think there's much drop off between Calais and Christian Wilkins, and two, Christian wasn't as versatile as Calais is. They're different players. Christian can play 200, 300 more snaps. But there's a reason why Calais was an all-decade player. There's a reason why he's probably one of the best edge setters in the NFL. And there's a reason why he's got 105 sacks in his career. How many does Christian have? So for those people who are thinking that there's some massive drop-off between Calais Campbell and Christian Wilkins, one of them is a 6-time Pro Bowler who's has a Hall of Fame trajectory, and the other hasn't even made it to a Pro Bowl yet. Let's keep things in perspective. And I really, no matter what Calais Campbell is making contractually, and I think it's probably in the $5 million a year realm, Christian is not worth $28 million a year. I'm sorry. No matter what you think of him, no matter how great he is, I don't even know if there's a defensive tackle that's worth $28 million a year. I'm not even sure if I would pay Aaron Donald $28 million a year, but more props to him and wish him the best of luck with the Raiders. But I think Calais Campbell is probably the biggest signing that the Dolphins have had this offseason.
Omar, did you learn something today?
Yeah, I did. I learned to expect Calais Campbell primarily going against the right tackle. I learned on passing downs, he's probably going to go to defensive tackle. And let's just hope that there are other players, edge guys, who can help this team too, because it can't be the Calais Campbell, Zach Sealer show. We're not running a defense like we ran last year. And Calais doesn't have 1,000 snaps in him.
Of course. Well, this is what the show is about, the Scouting Combine, teaching tape, making sure somebody comes out of here learning with something. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming on the Scouting Combine here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Go Fins, baby.
Thanks a lot, guys.